is, yes, this has been very much an up and down season, but if they went on this run in the postseason and made it to Omaha, I mean, we're not talking about this. We're not having this conversation,
No.
and Kingston's bought himself at least probably another year or two here at South Carolina. But I feel like, especially after going to a Super a year ago, anything short of that was probably not going to be good enough. If they made it to the Athens Super Regional this weekend, maybe his job is safe. I wouldn't say that for certain, but getting bounced in the regional, no matter how you slice it, probably was going to be the end of him. And you even saw it. I don't know if you got to watch his press conference on Sunday after the loss to James Madison, but you could just kind of see it in his body language, the way he was talking. It just seemed like he knew something was coming. Did we know it was going to happen yesterday? Not necessarily, but they wasted no time in doing that. And, now we're, again, on this search to find his replacement.
Yeah, and I know the pressure was kind of on him, especially, throughout the season, even before, the SEC tournament. So I think, kind of going into that press conference, kind of speaking to, that kind of that attitude, that mood, I think he kind of he probably knew, going into the postseason, if the team doesn't really go on some sort of run now, that, this could be the end.
Yeah. And some coaches, knowing they have that sense of urgency, thrive in those situations and thrive with that theoretical backup against the wall. And I'm not saying that Coach Kingston didn't do everything that he could to make sure this team won games at the end of the season and in the postseason, but it just didn't end up working out, and it came up short. And again, now would I have been shocked if they decided to bring him back next year? I wouldn't have been, because, Ray Tanner as the AD has given coaches a fairly decent leash when it comes to allowing them time, however much time they need, but before moving on from them. But, I think the right decision was made at the end of the day, because this program was treading water and kind of middling in the middle of the SEC, which, again, is a far cry from where you were just 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, eight years is, like I said, more than enough time, especially to, kind of bring a team that's used to, winning at the level that, the Gamecocks were, more than a decade ago now, which is kind of crazy to think. But I just, like I said, when you taste victory at a high level like that, it's kind of hard to, go from that success to then kind of reel it back in. The expectation is kind of always, how can we keep that going as long as possible?
Right. We put out a poll yesterday on our Twitter, asked the question, what type of coach would you like to see South Carolina pursue? Your options with somebody with Omaha experience, somebody from a rising program, somebody that is an up-and-coming Power 5 assistant, or a former Gamecock. Omaha experience is winning by a huge margin at 68.4%. Rising program is 16.2%. Former Gamecock is 9.4%, and a upcoming P5 assistant is 6.1%. And this is the debate that Terry and I were having yesterday. I feel like, because again, you've kind of seen two of these experiments already. You went with the former assistant in Chad Holbrook, who was the guy waiting in the wings, like, hey, he's been molded by Ray Tanner. He's been in this program for several years. He's ready to, take over the keys to the kingdom and keep them at the same level. That didn't happen. And then you went out there and found somebody at a rising power or a group of 5 program in Kingston from South Florida. That didn't work either. I think you really have to look at this and say, we got to knock this out of the park. We got to go find somebody out there that we know has been to Omaha, has the experience of taking a team to Omaha, and can come in here and turn this team into what we want them to be.
Absolutely. I mean, you obviously want somebody with experience of, playing in those big matchups, playing in that kind of environment, at the forefront of, leading that group of guys, if they're in that position of power. So I think primarily they want to go for, like you were saying, guys that have that Omaha experience, but even some guys that might have, professional experience, or even at that level, like playing in a postseason environment, playing in high pressure games, and as well as, just higher, environments where there's higher levels of talent, can really separate, candidates from, maybe somebody that did well at one program or was up and coming at a different program.
Let's hear what David Cloutier of the Post and Courier, he was on the post-game show with Jay and Elijah yesterday, and he was one of the first ones to break this story when it happened a little under 24 hours ago. Let's go with cut number 4 here, Dave. Here is David Cloutier yesterday discussing the candidates that are on that. We don't have that. Okay. All right. We'll come back around to that in just a minute, but we'll go through the list of some of the candidates that were potentially being looked at by South Carolina based on what insiders are reporting on to potentially be the next head coach here. One of them is Tim Walter at Wake Forest. Went to the College World Series just a season ago. I'd say that Wake Forest is one of those programs that's perennially been one of the better ones over the past handful of years. So he certainly checks that box. Dan McDonald up there at Louisville is somebody else that has done a really good job in his tenure there, bringing them to 5 different College World Series, but none since NIL came into play back in 2021. And that's something to me that is really important in this hire, is because here at South Carolina, you have the resources. This is a community that cares a lot about baseball, and if you are a coach that they think is capable of taking this team to heights, they will buy into this program. You'll get the funding that you need to bring in the talent that you need, and you should be able to thrive with it. So, and this is what Terry and I were talking about yesterday with McDonald. Is it a situation of Louisville just not caring enough to give them the resources, or is he not a coach that can use what he has to his advantage to bring that talent in to continue to compete at a high level?
Well, I think you'd really need to test that out, putting him in an environment like USC. I mean, obviously the resources and all that stuff is kind of here, but, you're not going to know. It also kind of depends on, plugging and playing, how certain people work with certain resources. So I think if the lack of resources, but the coaching is there for McDonald, bringing him into an environment like USC could kind of be a best of both world scenario, not just for USC, but also for him.
But at the same time, you can't take that risk because you have to, again, you got to nail this hire. Like you can't afford, because here's the thing. When you hire a coach, you're investing, I'd say at bare minimum 3 years. And yes, with today's transfer portal and stuff, you can certainly turn programs around a lot faster than that. But I think you get a really good gauge, and I keep this for all sports. I think you get a really good gauge of what a coach is going to be at a program after 3 years, because that gives them time to recruit, gives them time to build whatever foundation they're going to build on the program and install their quote-unquote culture. So you get an idea of what they're going to be. And after 3 years, you get a pretty, can make your assessment on if that guy's going to be good or not. So if you're hiring a head coach right now, you're looking at 2027 saying, okay, after 3 seasons, where is this guy? I don't think you can take a risk on somebody if you're not 100% sure that they're going to be able to come in and be successful or not. Because, again, we don't want to be having the same conversation in 3 years.
Right. I mean, you don't want to invest and then find out that it's not going to ultimately either help the program move forward or, kind of help the freshmen that did kind of were in that freshman class that really started with him, that kind of have worked through that senior year, not be able to kind of capitalize that and then set a precedent for the next classes kind of come in and forward.
And here's the dangerous thing about this, because the transfer portal is open for baseball as of right now. You want to be quick with your hire, but not too quick where you don't get the right guy. You know what I mean? And look, we've all been a part of, trying to get jobs and, the long interview process and getting called back for second interviews and the screening and all that kind of stuff. It can be lengthy, but sometimes going to a place that has a lengthy hiring process means they hire very well. And always be wary of the place that offers you the job, the second after the interview or something like that. We've all heard that, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of a similar case here where it's like you want to be quick, but you don't want to be too quick where maybe you're not getting the best guy that's going to be able to leave your program going forward. But at the same time, you have a roster full of talent right now that can jump in the transfer portal at any time if they're like, well, I don't know who my coach is going to be. I'm going to go try my options elsewhere. One of those guys, and Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball even alluded to this yesterday. He didn't name him specifically, but saying, hey, there's a big talent on South Carolina's roster that they're going to have trouble holding on to here, and we assume that's going to be Ethan Petrie. Very sought-after guy, had 2 amazing seasons in South Carolina, commands a lot of NIL money that if he went in the transfer portal, I don't think there's a program in the country that wouldn't want him.
Yeah, and it also didn't really help their case. He played great this past weekend, in Raleigh.
Despite the injury.
Right, to the hand.
Yeah.
But I think, personally, I think it was interesting that they kind of, and I know this is kind of dipping into your next point a little bit with Monty Lee, I think it would be interesting to actually see him get appointed to start just because he was a very focal point in that recruitment process.
Sure.
So he's got a good connection with a lot of these guys on the roster already. You know, keeping guys like Petrie, you know, knowing that they have a coach like this that they've already built a relationship with. You know, that's definitely one thing that really helps in the bullpen.
The Monty Lee conversation is a very interesting one. We'll jump into this in the next segment because I think it deserves more than a couple minutes because there are a lot of angles to that, including what you just brought up. So we'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. He is Sam Shapiro from WIS. I'm Tyler Head along with you on your Tuesday here on The Game. Welcome back in, Extra Point. Tyler Head, Sam Shapiro along with you on this Tuesday. Appreciate everybody watching us on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media as we continue our conversation about the head coaching search for South Carolina as they look to replace Mark Kingston, who had been at the helm for the past 8 seasons here at South Carolina. When you look at what they are doing in the interim, Monty Lee, who's the assistant coach, recruiting coordinator, has been placed as the head coach for the time being. Now, there's a lot of people that, when we were having the conversation yesterday about who the next head coach should be on our Firehouse Subtext line, as well as the Love Chevrolet phone lines, that were vouching for Monty Lee to be the next guy. And as the day went on yesterday, I also thought it was interesting. A lot of commitments and recruits for South Carolina also voicing their support for Monty Lee as well. PJ Morlando, who I don't think he's ever going to end up actually playing here at South Carolina because it's going to be such a high draft pick, was one of them, as well as a couple other guys that voiced their support on Twitter yesterday afternoon, Dalton Reeves being another one. Here's the thing, though, and I get it. From that perspective, as you were mentioning, Monty Lee was a part of their recruiting process. He's a recruiting coordinator, was one of their main, if not the main point of contacts for them coming to campus, then them experiencing the South Carolina program, and them wanting to become Gamecocks. I don't think that's enough to justify him being the guy, if that makes sense.
I could also, it makes sense because, recruiting doesn't necessarily translate to coaching necessarily. The reason I thought, that could kind of at least help with this kind of transition, especially for this team, is, when you have a group of guys that, have worked with a coach for an extended period of time already, and you've spent time, really kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and, how certain players play under certain circumstances, that can definitely give you an advantage over, maybe a coach that you're bringing in year one that doesn't really know, those certain, characteristics about their players.
Well, and again, going back to the fact that the transfer portal is now open and any player can jump in if they want to, if Monty Lee were to be the head coach, that would maybe keep some of those guys from leaving.
Like Petrie.
And again, that's kind of the big fish here that we're worried might end up jumping the transfer portal, especially, if the right coaching hire is not made. So you might have enough. And look, Monty Lee was a big part of Ethan Petrie coming along, because, and I know you weren't here when this happened, but when Petrie came in as a true freshman, nobody thought he was going to be much of anything, going through fall camp and all that kind of stuff, fall ball and everything. And then he just came out of the gate firing on all cylinders in the spring last year. And a lot of that was attributed to what Monty Lee, who had come over as an assistant to help with the offense, had done a season ago. So obviously a good relationship between those two guys. And he could potentially keep a guy like Ethan Petrie around, as well as some other notable players on this team. Again, I don't think that's enough to justify wanting him to be your guy to lead this program for years to come, because that is a short-term solution where you're saying, okay, well, at least we're keeping our current guys, or at least most of our current guys, as well as whatever recruiting class we have at this point in time. But again, when I look back on Monty Lee's history in his time at Clemson, because again, he took College of Charleston to a super regional, so that was enough to justify him getting the Clemson job. But again, when he was at Clemson, got him to some regionals, didn't get past that. And after NIL became a thing, his one season after NIL became a thing, they were under 500 in conference play, and he did end up getting the boot, and that's why he ended up at South Carolina. But he just didn't show enough to me at a Power 5 program to where I can comfortably say, yes, if Monty Lee becomes the head coach here at South Carolina, he's going to take this team farther than Kingston was going to.
And, he wasn't necessarily working with, all the assets in the world on not just this team, but also on that Clemson team as well. But I think a lot of it is going to be, this team kind of communicating with Lee, what this team really needs to kind of get back to that winning culture they saw back in 2010, 2011, get back to, consistently being over 500, being a dominant force in the SEC, winning weekends like, this past weekend at Raleigh. But having that kind of almost interpersonal relationship, almost just because Lee was on that recruiting front. These guys, I personally feel like, maybe might feel more comfortable explaining, this is XYZ things that aren't working. And, maybe under Kingston's tenure, maybe players were afraid to speak up about certain things, maybe not working for the team throughout the regular season, especially. So I think, having that kind of relationship will kind of allow, the team to kind of be more comfortable in speaking up with what they kind of need.
Now, the thing about Monty Lee is even before Kingston was fired, there was a lot of smoke connecting him to the open job at the Citadel. That seems like that is something that is going to happen. Now, again, he's the interim coach of South Carolina for right now, but I would lean towards him probably end up going to the Citadel to where, unless he just is enamored by this offer and thinks that he's going to be able to, again, do better than what Kingston was able to do here at South Carolina, it sounds like the Citadel is more likely an option. So you may not really have to have this to be too much of a decision if he ends up taking that job. And again, I'm just on team explore elsewhere, because again, if you took Coach Lee and made him the full-time head coach, you're still working with, and again, keeping a lot of the talent would be great, but you're still working with a lot of the same parts and pieces of the Kingston era. And I don't know how many assistant coaches he would hang on to if Matt Williams goes somewhere else or decides to stay with Monty Lee, but you're not really starting over. You know what I mean? You're just kind of shuffling things around from a regime that clearly was not working, clearly not up to the standards that you needed it to be. I'm really very much on the team of blow it up and start over. And yes, are you risking losing a lot of talent doing that? You are. And losing Ethan Petrie would be detrimental. Now, the hope is whoever you hire would be able to coax them into coming back. That's not a guarantee. That's just what you hope for. But this program needs a change. It needs something new and fresh, a new coach, a new idea, a new philosophy. And whoever that ends up being, again, I think it needs to be somebody that has proven that they can get a team to the postseason and be successful.
Mm-hmm. And like you were saying with, bringing in new coaches, it really takes a 2-3 year tenure to see specifically what they could possibly do. So, I think kind of wiping the whole thing and starting over might not necessarily hurt, but, if that fan base that's expecting, a team that's going to go to Omaha, especially in that first year, might not really look that way.
And I think the fan base is at a point where, again, they have not been to Omaha since losing that national championship series the year after winning back-to-back. Mm-hmm. I think they're game for anything at this point. Well, where, after the Holbrook thing didn't work out, because that would have been 2017 when Kingston got hired. If you'd have told them, or 2018, excuse me, if you would have told them back then, hey, we're going to go in a completely different direction, we're going to blow this up and start all over again, then I don't know if they would have been as cool with that. And Kingston maybe felt like I don't want to say a safe hire, but because he hadn't necessarily proven himself at South Florida, I feel like, kind of looking back on it in hindsight. But again, I think everybody's ready and game to do something completely different and something, just to get this program back to where they feel like it needs to be.
You think people would be excited if Tanner decided to AD and coach at the same time?
Here's the thing. The game of baseball has changed a lot. And Ray Tanner is very much an old school guy from what it seems like. I don't know if you have the same success him coaching today. And he's one of the greatest college baseball coaches we've ever seen, and certainly the best one South Carolina's ever seen. But, I think he's comfortable in his role as AD. Mm-hmm. He's certainly got a lot on his plate there. I wouldn't want him to do both those jobs at the same time. I'll say that much.
Mm-hmm. No, I saw people were commenting it yesterday. I figured it'd be criminal at least not to toss it out there.
Jim weighs in on the Firehouse Subs text line. This fan base needs a complete refresh start. There needs to be a big name coach who has a proven record, and it needs to be a clean slate starting from scratch. We do not need to hold on to Monty. And I agree with that. I think you got to just completely start over and hope. And again, will it work? There's no guarantee on that. You could go out there and hire somebody that has been to multiple College World Series, multiple trips to Omaha, and it still doesn't work. But you got to try.
We need a Don Staley of baseball.
And you know what? Dawn Staley is actually a pretty good comparison to look at. And she was somebody that hadn't taken Temple to the heights that she obviously took South Carolina to, but there's a lot of promise there. And she comes in here, and nobody really cared about women's basketball at that point in time, but she took the program to these great heights, and now they're the standard in women's basketball, at the college level. And are you going to be able to go out there and hire that guy that can do that for South Carolina? I don't know, but that's where your hope is going to be, obviously.
if I'm if I'm rooting for the Gamecocks next spring, I mean, I'm definitely looking for. I'm hoping to get that Don Staley of baseball.
Well, and look, you have a fan base that cares. You have a fan base that is passionate, that's going to buy in, that's going to sell out Founders Park each and every week if they think that this program is worth that. And as we talked about a lot this year, it got to the point where there was so much apathy with the Kingston administration and Kingston era that people didn't care as much as they did in the past. And there wasn't that same level of excitement and rejuvenation for this program. Hiring somebody that has a proven track record can reignite this fan base.
It's just when you have a fresh face, you got something new to look forward to. It always revamps everything.
Definitely so. And look, this is going to carry us for however long this head coaching search is going to go on, and maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, who knows. But that is the story of the summer as of right now. We'll continue to follow it. I want to switch gears coming up next, though. Dive into an interesting football conversation. I didn't get to get to this last week. Netflix looking to potentially do a documentary on the SEC. There's a lot of potential for this and a lot of, I think, cool things that come from it. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. He is Sam Shapiro from WIS. I am Tyler Head here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point here on the game. Tyler Head, Sam Shapiro along with you on this Tuesday. And plenty more baseball conversation as the morning and the day goes along as we continue to search for Coach Kingston's replacement here at South Carolina. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I think this perfectly fits within our segment of who does the heavy lifting, sponsored by our friends over at TEC Equipment Rental on Old Dunbar Road in West Columbia. And in a weird way, not even in a weird way, we kind of know this, the SEC does such heavy lifting for college football and college sports in general. I mean, the SEC is obviously the biggest and most respected conference within college football, and there's so much intrigue that comes because of that, to the point where Netflix, per The Athletic, this came out a couple days ago, is close to a deal with the SEC to have a documentary series on the conference, which I'm assuming would be shot this year. I don't know, did you ever watch Drive to Survive or anything like Pro Swing on Netflix? You familiar with those at all?
I watched the quarterback series. They had a little
Okay,
bit.
so I didn't watch that one. I know what you're talking about, the pro quarterback one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so something similar to that, basically, and like Drive to Survive follows Formula One, Full Swing follows the PGA Tour, where it's going week by week with the stars of these respective sports, giving you the insight into their personalities and the insight into what's going on within the sport and all those kind of things. And we haven't necessarily seen that at a college level quite yet. But let me tell you, the SEC would be so interesting.
They're doing the heavy lifting.
They are literally would be doing the heavy lifting and creating so much intrigue because, again, anything the SEC does within college football attracts attention. There's a reason the SEC network is the most successful individual network for a conference, better than the ACC network, Big Ten network, when the Pac-12 network was the thing before it went out under. There's a reason because people care so much. So if Netflix does this, it is going to do the heavy lifting of sports on Netflix because so many people are going to be interested in this because we care so much about what happens within our programs here in the SEC. And I was thinking about this from like a South Carolina perspective, like this would be gold for somebody like Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer, who is very much into the social media stuff, very much into the, promoting the program side of things as head coach. He would thrive in an environment like this.
Screams NIL money bags to me.
Well, that too, and it gives you the opportunity, and I don't know how they would compensate the players or if that's part of this. I imagine it would be to some degree if they're being featured on this show because now you can actually pay them for those kind of things. But like just Beamer's personality, to have like a camera crew following him around in this program around every day, every week, well, whatever it may be, I think that to a T would fit what he is as a personality perfectly.
And, some of the talent they just brought in, went and got drafted. I mean, they're bringing in professional talent. Beamer's got like a great personality. There's just so many different possibilities that you could kind of, really rope out and kind of just expand on, just through having a documentary just centered around the team. Like you said, there's so many different elements, even with just this program alone. They wouldn't necessarily have to focus on a program, I feel like, that, like in Alabama, that's winning every game. You could kind of find plot lines and loopholes, and, those are at least two, especially with the Gamecocks. So
the Alabama thing is interesting, though, especially if this is going to happen this upcoming season, because, look, I think we've kind of all known what the Alabama program was with Nick Saban, and there's been plenty of in-depth behind-the-scenes stuff and things on the SEC network that kind of show you what that program is like. I am so intrigued by how different it's going to be with Kalen DeBoer. And I've noticed just in Kalen DeBoer's interactions with the media, some of the things that we've seen come out from Alabama spring practices and stuff like that, it's night and day. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing because we don't know yet because they haven't started playing football games and they won't for 90 some odd days. But the difference in styles between Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer, I don't think could be any more different. And that is so intriguing for a program that, again, has been at the top of college football for a decade and a half to suddenly flip the switch and have a different personality as a coach. I'm very interested to see what that would look like behind the scenes.
If I'm producing this documentary, the first episode is a new the first page of a new era. Like, what is Kalen DeBoer, going to do with this program? How is he kind of, changing the culture from that Saban era? I mean, like you just said, millions of people would probably kill, maybe even cut off their left leg to know what that would kind of, I guess, start to look like, or
sure,
would at least want a little bit of a taste, coming in, leading into that week one.
Ole Miss is also another interesting one, and kind of similar to Coach Beamer. I feel like Lane Kiffin and what we know about him as a personality would just thrive in an environment like this. And look, he's somebody who likes to poke fun at himself, likes to have fun on social media. Like, I feel like Ole Miss would be very entertaining to see the backside of when it comes to what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, they always got great, talented players as well, too, that I think would also be, it would be interesting to kind of follow them as well. I know necessarily they're not punching out like a Alabama type season, but like you said, I think there are a lot of different storylines and loopholes and different elements of the plot that I think they could really exploit to, if they got each team necessarily got their own episode, there would be a lot to kind of capitalize on, a lot of a big story to tell.
And they weren't, they didn't have too many details on this. I don't know if you've ever seen SEC Inside on the SEC Network, but it's kind of something like that where, for like a week they're with this program showing practice, what goes on in the locker room, that kind of stuff. But I imagine what we've seen with Netflix in the past, it'd go much, much deeper. We'd really get into the lives of these players a little bit outside of football, and especially in today's world of NIL. I can only imagine some of the extravagant lifestyles some of these players live with at the college level now. So that'd be very interesting. Did you ever watch Last Chance U on Netflix?
Yeah, a little bit.
I really enjoyed that. Because, and yes, that's not high-level college football. That's these guys hoping for an opportunity to either get to that level or get back to that level. But I really enjoyed learning who these guys were and learning about their lives, how they got to this point, what goes on when they're not on the football field, when they're not in the classroom, like humanizing these guys a little bit.
Exactly, yeah.
Because when we watch college football, especially in the SEC, these are the cream of the crop, the 4- and 5-star talents that we've been hearing about since they were 14 and 15 years old, that we expect to just go out there and play football at a high level. But so many of them, and we're spoiled here, specifically at this radio station with South Carolina, because we do get the opportunity to sit in here with a lot of these talents, learn about where they come from, learn about their lives outside of football, but we don't get that with the rest of the SEC. So being able to learn about a Jalen Milroe at Alabama, what's his life like outside of football? Where does he come from? What's his backstory like? I'm literally intrigued by that. I think that would be really cool to see all that kind of be laid out in this new documentary series.
Mm-hmm. And expanded on that, what made him want to pick up a football when he was 4, 5, 6 years old? What made him want to keep playing, through elementary school? What got him out of bed at 6 in the morning to run sprints up his childhood hill? I mean, it's all the stuff you watch in the movies, but, really humanizing those people. It makes you want to, when they go out in the field, it makes you want to root for them even more.
And everybody has a story, which is what makes this intriguing. And, not only the fact that, but if you're the starting quarterback at Alabama, what's that like to live day to day? What's it like to have those expectations on your shoulders? For somebody like him that got benched last year, what was that like? Like, there's so many different angles just looking at Alabama, not to mention the fact that Georgia, which is the standard program in college football right now, Texas coming into the conference and what they're able to do. Like, there's so many different angles. And I don't know if you'd get one episode per one team or how this would work, but you give me a documentary about the SEC on Netflix, I'm all in.
And I feel like out of that especially, you're going to get a lot more fans, maybe people kind of like myself that are they're following more pro sports, and then they're kind of, looking at some of the college sports outside looking in. But, I mean, when you really humanize, the parts to the puzzle, that I think will not just bring in more money for the SEC, but it'll bring in a whole new fan base for them, just because you're humanizing a lot of these characters that are, representing their family, the name on the back of their jersey every day.
For sure. So if that does end up happening, I'll be very excited about it, but hopefully some more details will come out in time with the SEC and something potentially happening on Netflix. We'll come back. We'll wrap up today's edition of The X Point. Get to send me your calls on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, as well as maybe talk a little bit of the NBA Finals, which are getting set to start here in a couple days as well. He is Sam Spear from WIS. I'm Tyler Head on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Sam Shapiro along with you here for a couple of more minutes. And again, we're going to continue our conversation as the day goes along about the head coaching search to replace Mark Kingston here at South Carolina. We'll let you know coming up next in the Garnet Trust Hour. We're going to have Ja'Kai Moore, South Carolina offensive lineman, sitting down for a little bit, telling us about himself, the South Carolina team, and projecting ahead to the upcoming fall season here. A little, I think, 89 days away, I heard Preston say earlier on this morning. But want to get back in the Coach Kingston conversation real quick. Gamecock Larry been holding on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Gamecock Larry, we talked to you yesterday morning before the news came out. What's on your mind this morning now that we know that Coach Kingston is no longer the coach here? Oh, hold on. We'll get to Gamecock Larry in just a second here. But Gamecock Larry, I'm sure, shares the sentiment of many people here that were very excited to see a change be made at the head coaching spot here at South Carolina. And now we kind of cross our fingers and hope that the right hire is made, whether it be quickly or takes a little bit of time. But regardless, somebody that can lead this program to the heights that this fan base expects it to be at.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be. I definitely don't think it'll be easy finding somebody to replace the shoes of Tanner, especially. But I don't know.
Well, and it's hard to. I think it's impossible to predict somebody that's going to be able to come in here and say, all right, we'll win back-to-back national championships and play for a third win in the course of 3 years. Like, I don't think that's necessarily what people are saying needs to happen, but just get you back to Omaha. Because that, to me, again, is for a program that, and it wasn't just during Tanner's tenure here at South Carolina, this program had a long history of playing in the College World Series before Tanner even got here. Like, that's what this fan base, for however long you've been a fan, just expects. And we haven't done that in over 10 years. It's like, just give you somebody that can get back there. Because, again, when you get to Omaha, anything can happen. And if you're one of those best 8 teams, you can go on a run, you can get cold, whatever it may be. Just getting there, though, is that bar that people have been waiting for South Carolina to jump over that, unfortunately, they haven't been able to.
And just, finding a coach, I guess, one thing I noticed about Kingston was he was under 500 in SEC play. Mm-hmm. Just finding a coach, I guess, that would get you over that hump, at least in conference play and that local matchups, especially would, get the morale, I guess, going, especially through the regular season.
Yeah, so we will we'll see what happens. But, and again, this is going to be an ongoing conversation that we're going to have even as the hire gets made and what happens after that. Before we get out of here, I want to talk about this a little bit. By the time we come back in next Tuesday with you, we'll already have, 3 games, I guess, in the books from the NBA Finals probably as they get set to roll coming up on Thursday, where you have Dallas and Boston squaring off. And intriguing matchup, and I don't know, should be a fun series.
I'm very excited to see how these teams are going to stack up with each other. I think it's going to come down to a lot of how Boston plays defense and if Dallas's backcourt can live up to the hype that everybody has been hyping them up to. I think this Luka Kyrie combination that we're seeing is definitely one of the most lethal we've seen since Steph and Clay back in 2016. But I think it's going to be very dependent on if they can shoot hot. I mean, I know especially when Kyrie is not consistent, he does not play well, and the team suffers because of it. Regardless of what team he's on, really.
Yeah, and I'm going to be interesting to see how Dallas's defense can slow down Boston offense, if they can at all, because I think that's kind of the key matchup of this series.
Mm-hmm. And Porzingis coming back, too, is definitely going to help that offensive firepower. It's going to help the offense, rejuvenate even more. But, especially in that Eastern Conference final series with Indiana, I mean, a big reason why Boston was really beat the Pacers to a pulp was because, Jaylen Brown really helped carry the consistency of that team, and it's really going to be which team shoots more consistent. I mean, both teams take great shots. Both teams are, very high. They score a lot of points, but it's really going to be who shoots more consistently throughout the series.
If you had to sit here and predict how many games this is going to be before it starts, what's your guess?
If both teams are shooting well, it's going to at least 6 games. I would not be surprised if Boston got that 18th banner, but I would also not be surprised if Luka got his first.
Now, who are you cheering for?
I got to go with Dallas. I mean, Boston took out my Heat, and they got enough banners. So I'd like to see Dallas get another one.
That's kind of the running joke when it comes to Boston fans, just in general, not talking about just Celtic fans and all, but they've been so spoiled in their lives when it comes to the Patriots, the Celtics, the Bruins. I mean, constant parade after parade after parade. I don't think if you're what, 3 years old, maybe you've never seen a parade, but for the most part, if you've grown up in the past 20 years in Boston, you've seen the parades people could only dream of seeing.
They get a parade every 90 days, and the funniest part, kind of segueing to another point I wanted to bring up, I think it's funny how both of these teams have been built by the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay.
I mean, Jason Tatum should be a Brooklyn Net. They got that third pick from, the trade with Pierce and Garnett. And then, Kyrie was on the Nets, 2 seasons ago?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just funny to watch two products of Brooklyn that have kind of totally failed now have found their way to the NBA Finals without Brooklyn.
It's so funny that, now that Luka's playing in the NBA Finals, you look back on that draft where the Atlanta Hawks had him, they gave him away.
For Trae Young.
And people still try and justify that in Atlanta. Look, Trae Young's a good player, but he's not Luka.
No. Trae Young's not. He's not taking to the Hawks to any NBA Finals single-handedly anytime soon.
Unfortunately not. So we'll see what happens in the NBA Finals, and we'll get your thoughts on that on Tuesday when we have a couple games in the books there. But appreciate it as always, Sam, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Again, this has been the Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Garnet Trust Hour. Kai Moore going to join us for a little bit, talking all things Gamecock football as we navigate through the summer here on the game. One second. Hold on. Once again, I want to remind you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. You always need to keep an eye on what's going on with your home, especially if you notice things like cracks in your exterior brick. Cracks and walls are above windows and door frames. Doors and windows that might be a little bit sticky or uneven or bouncy floors, or things like cracks over your garage door. If you're noticing any of these problems, any of them at all, you could have serious foundation problems with your home, and that's where Canty Foundation Specialist comes in. Go online to cantycanfixit.com and schedule an appointment with a professional that will come out to your home, evaluate what's going on with that foundation, and make sure they can get you and your family fixed up right so you can live comfortably going forward. Again, make sure you keep an eye on things going on with your home. And if you notice any problems at all, go online to cantycanfixit.com and schedule an appointment today with our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back in. This is another edition of the Garnet Trust Hour on both Gamecock Central and on the game. We got a very special guest joining us here today. It is South Carolina veteran offensive lineman Ja'Kai Moore. Ja'Kai, I know you guys have just started summer workouts. You got a lot going on, man. So first of all, we appreciate you taking the time. And second of all, how you been doing?
Of course, anytime, man. And Wes, I've been good, man. Just working out every day, and it feels good to be back with the team, especially the O-line. I feel like we've made some big strides in these past 3 to 4 weeks as we've been on break, and time to get back now. I feel like we've made great strides in just working with Luke Day, and I feel like it's going to impact us during the season.
Yeah, so Ja'Kai, I know Coach Beamer has been doing those welcome home tours like in late April and May, and he really talked about the O-line quite a bit and how May was kind of a month. It's one of the maybe rare months that football players can kind of take a little bit of time to rest and reset. And he said he kind of encourages you guys to do so, but he also said there were several players that thought it was important to stick around Columbia a little bit, to still use the facilities, use the weight room, kind of on a voluntary basis. So he mentioned you and Vershawn Lee kind of being leaders among that group. So how impactful do you think it could be for several of you guys that you kind of maybe got in those few extra weeks of work in the weight program to let you just hit the ground running in the summer program?
I feel like it impacts us tremendously. I think that what we're doing in the summertime, like literally they could have been at home doing nothing, just sitting at home playing the game. But the O-line, we want to work, and we're finding ways to get better and just increase ourselves. And I felt like doing the work during the summertime has made such a big difference that we're going through rolling. So I feel like as long as we go off that, and we'll be good.
For sure, man. And kind of speaking to that leadership piece, I know that, like I said a second ago, Beamer specifically mentioned V. Lee and you and just said, these are veteran guys that have kind of taken ownership of this group. So, one, I'm sure as a player, it's good to hear your coach notice that and mention that. But for you personally, do you feel like you have made a concerted effort to take on a bigger leadership role this offseason?
Yes, I have actually feel like I've made time to just sit there and try to play with my teammates, man, hang out with them and have a good time, man. So, I have a Nintendo Switch over here, and shoot, I'll tell the boys, shoot, y'all can come over, play Switch, and we'll just have a good time and cool and just hang out. And, I feel like that's different from last year into this year. I feel like we're making more engagements with each other and just trying to hang out. And those are little things that go a long way, just asking somebody what you're doing. If y'all want to go work out, y'all want to go play the game, just doing little stuff like that, even going to eat and stuff. So I feel like we made such a stride going that way. Man, sky's the limit, man.
So we actually had an interview with Torricelli Simpkins III a couple of weeks ago, and he was just talking about how I think you had invited him over to play the game, and how just welcoming, because it's kind of interesting in college football today. You got the returners like yourself, you got the young bucks, the freshmen that have come in, they're trying to get acclimated. Then you got the transfers who are closer to your age, but they're still new to South Carolina. So how do you feel like this group has been able to sort of start to come together, even though y'all are all coming from different ways of life, different former schools, and just kind of coming from everywhere?
Well, one thing I'll say, Wes, is we enjoy being around each other. Oftentimes there's these cliques. You have one clique right here and one clique right here. I feel like we all join together and we can just go hang out together and there won't be any problems. There's nobody having any problems with anyone on the team or anything. We have a good group of kids, and also the young bucks Josiah, Blake Franks, Cam Pringles, all them boys. It's they're willing to work, and we just bringing them along, and they doing the stuff themselves too, man. So I'm happy about that. They're taking ownership up too and just doing it themselves.
For sure, man. So I wanted to ask you, Ja'Kai, in today's college football world, 2024, obviously the transfer portal is very active, and there's nothing wrong with hitting the portal if that's what somebody wants to do. But what was it about just South Carolina and your own sort of personal goals and just your plans for life moving forward that made you want to use this extra year of eligibility to come back and continue at South Carolina versus exploring elsewhere or whatever other options you could have possibly had? What has it been about South Carolina that made you make that decision for yourself?
First off, I'll say Coach Teasy, man. That's my dog, man. And like, he's been there with me through everything. So one thing is I enjoy my strength coach. I love Coach Day, Coach Teasy. That's my man. So like, I feel like I built such good connections that I feel like I can end off strong here and like on a good note. And I just have all good vibes. And like, yeah, the transfer portal is there, but I don't want to go anywhere else. Like, I feel like this is where I want to finish my seasons at.
Coach Beamer also told us that you've brought some valuable versatility to the offensive line. And I know you guys cross-train, like several guys have played like guard and tackle or guard and center. But I was actually looking at your bio, man, and it's like, Jakai did this many games at left tackle, this many games at right tackle, this many at left guard, right? You really have kind of played all four of those spots. How valuable do you think and kind of hope that can be for your team this year, that you sort of have a comfort level and SEC experience at that, not just practice reps, SEC experience at multiple positions?
I feel like that goes a long way, just knowing that I can play every position and like I have the experience to go out there and play 4 positions, 5 positions. I feel like having versatility like that, we can spread it around, flip it up anytime that we want to. If something isn't working, we can go this way, we can go a different way, and just see how things are fitting without really like taking a step off. You know what I'm saying?
For sure, man, for sure. So, Jakai, how, as you kind of look back on the spring, both in terms of the O-line in general and just yourself, as you kind of look back on the 14 practices and just the learning experience as well, kind of implementing all those new guys we were talking about, how do you feel like in general that the spring went for you and your group?
I feel like we took a stride, but of course, we're not all the way there yet. Yeah, but I feel like we took a good stride, but as long as we keep our head down and we keep working and we stay consistent with our craft every day and just the extra work that we're putting in right now, we're hoping that it's going to show off, when the time comes. So, yeah.
For sure, man. So I think it's kind of been interesting talking to some of your teammates about their first impressions of Sean Elliott. And, high energy guy. And obviously – he is, run game coordinator, so he's working with the tight ends, but he's involved in some of the run game stuff, some of the schematics. Jakai, I kind of forget. So I saw Coach Elliott when he was here, like previously. So I already knew he was a little bit, high energy to say the least. But what for you guys getting to be around him on a day-to-day basis and get kind of exposed to him for the first time, what has been kind of your first impressions of Coach Elliott?
Coach Elliott, man, he's a man. One thing I'll say, he doesn't fake it. He brings the energy every day, and he comes with a positive attitude and a positive mindset to just get better. And that's what I'll say. Like, he instills that. Like, you're not going to go over here and just have a terrible day with me. He's like, I'm going to get on you, and we're going to have a good day. So, yeah.
Jakai, I think, when you look at sort of any team, I feel like kind of from year to year can take on its own personality, its own kind of vision, and it can shift. Last year, a lot of it was built around the passing game and Spencer and Xavier Legette and those guys. You look at the potential of these QBs with Lenora Sellers and then Robbie Ashford. There's some athleticism. There's some run game there. Then you look at the running backs you guys added to that group as well. What have you seen, without giving anything away, but what have you seen from just those quarterbacks and kind of what they could bring in terms of some athleticism and the QB run game potentially to make some things happen this year?
I think if we're talking about just run game and pass game, I feel like we got some explosion. So I feel like any game we're going to be in there just competing, like not giving too many details, but like our QBs, they make plays, and it's like one thing. Lenore's very good, Robbie's very good, and like I feel like Luke is too, man. So those are three QBs that I feel like can go out there and just do their thing without any fall offs and nothing switching up. So that's one thing.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right, y'all, we're talking to Ja'Kai Moore. We're hanging out. This is the Garnet Trust Hour. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to continue on. We're going to talk a little bit about Ja'Kai's career to this point. We're going to look ahead to this season, and we're going to talk a little bit about off the field and what Ja'Kai likes to do in his free time. We'll be right back on the Garnet Trust Hour.
Our friends over at Integrated Media can help bring your home into the modern age, because when you choose Integrated Media to install your smart home systems or do anything that you need at your home or business from an audio-visual standpoint, they're going to help you be amazed by what your phone can do. Utilizing your smartphone, you can control your lights, your thermostat, your sound systems, TVs, security cameras, and your alarm. Again, all from the touch of a button. Go check out what they can do at integratedmediainc.com. They've got reviews there for you. They have a lot all about their services. Again, security and cameras, TV installations, audio, video, home theater, and complete smart home solutions where you can control everything in your home from the touch of a button. 803-948-8327 or go to their website, integratedmediainc.com. Michael, Nathan, their team, I can personally attest to the fact they're awesome. They've been to my home, integratedmediainc.com.
All right, welcome back in. It's Garnet Trust Hour on the Game and Gamecock Central, hanging out with Jakai Moore. I'm Wes Mitchell. Jakai, man, I remember when you committed to South Carolina back in the day.
Yeah.
You messed with us a little bit.
Yeah, I did a little bit.
For those who don't remember, so you pulled the some guys pull the hat switch or the shirt switch. Yours was like a double or a triple switch up.
Yeah, I did.
What was it? You had you had a Gamecock shirt, then a Penn State. Then, you want to take everybody through it? I know it was a while back.
Yeah. So this is the day before. This is the day of the game, right? Our basketball game, because I was in basketball season, and this is my commitment day. So I had my Patriot hoodie on, and so I took that off, and so after that I had a South Carolina jacket on, and then I took that off, and after my South Carolina shirt, I ended up having a Penn State hoodie on, and so I put that on, and then I picked the hat and I faked it and put it down and pulled out South Carolina. I just wanted to be different and like switch it up a little bit and have some fun with it. That's all I really wanted to do.
Yeah, I think you could like hear a little gasp in the room when that happened. I think I remember the answer to this too, Jakai. And I think Eric Wolford was the coach then, the O-line coach?
Yeah, Eric Wolford was.
Did Wolf know you were doing that, or he didn't have any idea?
I told him that night.
Oh, okay. See, he knew what was up.
Yeah.
So, man, when you kind of look back on this journey and, you have had multiple O-line coaches, multiple head coaches. But, again, like we talked about earlier, you've stuck it out and, have obviously enjoyed your time and have been kind of loyal to the school as well. What will you – and I know you got one more season, so hopefully many more memories to come, but – what will you kind of look back on the most about your time at South Carolina, at least to this point?
I'll just say just all the relationships and friends that I've met through this time, man. Like Ryan, going from back to Ryan Linsky, man. Like all them connections I built, Ryan, Eric Douglas, Will Rogers, like Javon Glenn and all them boys, like from before time. Like those are connections that I'll never lose, and I'll always keep them around, like just checking up, making sure they're good. They'll check up on me. And so that's my biggest thing coming here is just I've met lifelong friends, and I can't complain about it, man. It's been a blessing.
Yeah, and speaking of those friends and teammates, Jakai, we've heard a lot of buzz about some of these defensive linemen, and I know that's a veteran group as well. And, a lot of those guys came back, Tonka, Boogie, TJ, all on the interior. Then you add in Jules and Goodwine and those groups, and that's just the inside guys. Then you add in some new guys kind of out there at that edge, defensive end spot. Yeah. How much sort of maybe iron sharpens iron has it been for you guys this spring, and what did those guys do for you, and then hopefully you do for them in terms of just that day-to-day competition?
They brought that competition every single day. There wasn't like what Coach Ash says is roller coasters. Like there wasn't no up and down days. It was, man, we going head to head. There's no days off. We're getting work because we're here to compete. And everybody, what I love is everybody's here trying to just play ball and get to the next level, man, and just be better at what they're doing.
Definitely, man. So, is there anybody on the team that, and I don't mean like in a bad way, but is there anybody you have like a friendly rivalry with that you feel like on the D-line that you're just always matching up with that guy and y'all kind of push each other? Torricelli said it's Jules for him. He said, man, I always end up matched up with him. Is there anybody like that for you?
Yeah, man, I like K9, Kyle Kennard. Shoot, I like JT Jaddy's gear. So them boys gave me good competition, and I love it, man, because they play ball, man. So I enjoy that.
For sure. So we said we were going to off the field a little bit. We always like to ask, your teammates and the guys that have been on before about what you're doing when you're not playing football. And I know you mentioned the video game a little bit. So I guess first and foremost, who or what games are you playing? That's kind of your top few games?
See, so I play the Nintendo Switch, and also I got an Xbox too. I'm an Xbox game, so. But Nintendo Switch, and I say the number one game I play is Super Smash Bros. It's a fighting game, so you can have like up to 6 players. And I'll have people over here almost every day playing. Also, we'll play Mario Kart 2, and we have Super Mario Wonder World. And it's a whole bunch of like games like that. Old Mario games that I used to watch my brother play back then, but didn't really have an understanding. And now I'm playing it now. And like I understand why they want to play it.
Yeah.
So, and so what I'll do is shoot. I'll hit some of my teammates up like, yo, what's up with y'all? Like, do y'all want to come over? Like, I got a top 3 who we always like, we compete on the field, but we compete off the field too, just playing Super Smash Bros, man. And it's Alex Huntley, Mo Cobbin, and Rashawn Lee. They come over almost every day, and we work, man. We over here fighting.
So it gets intense, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it gets intense. We be mad at each other.
That's awesome, man. And I'm sure it helps with team building and all the other things we were talking about earlier as well.
Yeah.
I think so. Most of the guys, it seems like, are more Call of Duty, Madden, 2K. You got at least a little bit different experience, I think, with the Nintendo game. So that's kind of cool. Did you? So. Yeah. Did we opt into the NCAA, the new football game?
Yeah, I opted in. And like, don't get twisted. I do play those games too, but it's just I enjoy playing the Switch a lot too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did opt in the NCAA, and so I can't wait to get that in July. I believe so. It's July, right?
Yeah, mid July. Yeah. It'll be here, man.
So I can't wait for that, man.
What did it mean, just as a guy who does play games, to be like, man, I'm legitimately gonna be in a football, not just like number 55 in a Gamecock jersey, but literally you got some compensation for it. Everybody did. That's gotta kind of be a surreal moment when you really think about it.
Nah, it truly is, man. Cause like all my boys back home, they're like, man, I can't wait to get this NCAA, man. I'm gonna use the Gamecocks, bro. I'm gonna see you on there. So like, man, it's a blessing, man. Honestly, cause just to like hear my boys saying that, and it means the world to me. And I can't wait to play it myself, man, and just see how it is. Cause NCAA, we've been talking about that game coming out since I don't know how long.
Yeah. Yeah.
The opportunity to come out this year, man, I'll be on it. I can't wait. But
what do you think they're going to make your rating? You think they're going to be fair to you, or do you care about the rating? Or
I don't care about the rating. I just want to play football, man.
Definitely, man. So, I know we're all excited about that. It's going to be fun when that comes out. We'll stop it right there. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is Garnet Trust Hour on Gamecock Central and The Game, hanging out with Ja'Kai Moore. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, let me tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. Check them out, classicroofingsc.com, or just give them a call today, 803-590-7870. My buddies Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, they're going to take great care of you and your roof. They've got a wealth of experience spanning more than 20 years. Their team of experts is well equipped to handle any and all of your roofing requirements. That could be just a residential project there at your house. If you're a business owner, that could be a commercial undertaking, or really that could be anything big or small in between. They have got you covered. Obviously, if you own your home or a business, your roof is one of the absolute most important parts that you want to make sure is taken care of. Let them come out, do a free estimate on your roof, and let you know how much life that roof has left so that you can plan
plan for future repairs. Set that up, classicroofingsc.com, or call them today, 803-590-7870.
All right, guys, we're back closing it out here with Jakai Moore, Garnet Trust Hour. And Jakai, you have kind of a unique position in that when you entered college athletics, NIL was like not a thing. And I think they were maybe starting to talk about it a little bit, but now it's everywhere, man. Like it is, it's like the thing that is talked about. And how much have you sort of just seen the landscape from your own eyes change as far as what college athletics is from when you were being recruited to now seeing where it is with you as an upperclassman?
Yeah, well, first off, I'll say it's like when I first came in, you weren't like seeing too many people just leaving schools. Like, yeah, you would see a couple people leave here and there, but like it was like that upcoming COVID year that just happened, and like the transfer portal became major. Then like the NIL world came a couple years later. So like just seeing that change like throughout your whole college career, like it's actually pretty interesting to see like, wow, like all this stuff is happening and it's happening so fast. And I would say like my biggest difference about it is just like coming in with the people that you came in with, man, you always want to be with your boys. But, like, also having an understanding that they're trying to be successful and they have goals that they're trying to reach. And, like, it's a clear understanding. I feel like I've never, like, left a teammate who, oh, man, I had a bad connection with them or anything. Like, it's always been love, and we've had a mutual understanding of, like, why they did it and, like, their reasoning. So, yeah.
For sure. And so, Jakai, we also like to use these interviews to give fans just kind of a little bit of a glimpse, a little behind the scenes of like a day in the life, what your schedule is like these days. So I know, you guys are currently in that kind of summer workout part of the schedule. And that's kind of using the next couple months to lead up to then you'll be in preseason ball. And I think Coach Beamer had told us there's maybe, is it 4 workout days per week or something like that?
Yeah.
Can you just give the fans a little insight, like kind of what a week looks like for you guys at this point in like the college football calendar?
All right. So I'll say it like explain the best way possible. So Monday through Thursday, I say probably from 6:30 to 12 o'clock, I'll say. We're working out, we're doing football stuff, and also like we're conditioning too. So, we're just trying to get our bodies right back in shape. So then after that, you'll have chill time. You can also do your schoolwork throughout those times, but like later on in the day, I'll go out, get me an extra workout in. And also I got a dog. Her name's Cookie. So I take her to the facility, get some runs in with her. So shoot, I can burn her energy out. One thing I like is just keeping my dog in shape, man, and just making sure she's living a happy life. So I enjoy doing stuff like that. And that's really like a day in the life. Mm-hmm.
What kind of dog you got?
I got a Brindle Blue Nose Pit Bull Terrier.
Okay. How long have you had her?
I've had her for 2 years now.
That's awesome, man. My dog is actually asleep right beside us right now as we're doing this interview. So
she's not.
Hey,
she's knocked out in the cage right now, just chilling.
Fellow dog owner, dog lover here, man. So I guess in terms of the workouts, I know earlier there were 2 people you kind of mentioned specifically. You mentioned obviously your O-line coach and Lonnie Teasley, and you mentioned Luke Day as being a huge part of kind of your experience at South Carolina. Every guy we talk to, Jakai, is like, man, that's some of the most unique workouts that I've ever been a part of. So what's your favorite workout or lift or exercise that you do at South Carolina? And what is the one workout or lift or exercise where you're like, oh man, we got to do that today?
I've been through a lot of stuff with Luke Day. I can't quite tell you what exactly, but I'm not gonna lie. Those bike runs, they are pretty crucial in carrying them 150-pound sandbags. I say those would be the most like crucial things throughout this time. Yeah.
What exactly is that, Jakai?
So basically, just like carrying sandbags, very heavy sandbags, probably like 80 pounds. They can range from 80 pounds to like 150. So yeah, we'll normally do like a little carrier here. Nothing too crazy though.
And you're like throwing them on your back, basically.
Yeah, they'd be like say like 80 pounds. Put them on our back, and like we make it around. But we also have to like run after that too and get little breaks. So it's very tiring, and you just gotta get your wind under shape. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I say that's definitely probably the most challenging thing. Carry what you kill. That's what we call it.
Okay. Yeah. And as we close it out here, Jakai, when you sort of look ahead to this season, is there anything kind of for you personally that you are most focused on in terms of this is an area I want to improve, whether it's weight room, whether it's on-field technique? What are you kind of focused on as you go into your final season at South Carolina? Is there anything in particular?
One thing I'll say I'm focused on is just really taking care of my body. Because, like, I'm getting up there, man. So I just try to make sure that I take care of my body. I stay in the training room all the time, man. So, yeah, that's the one. That's the number one thing I would say.
Yeah, and you've been through the rigors of college football at this point as a veteran guy.
For sure.
How do you feel right now, like going into your final year? Do you feel like you're where you want to be and where you need to be going into that final season?
Yeah, I feel like I'm where I want to be, where I need to be, man. Just not necessarily because I still got work to do. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I feel like, yeah, all right, I'm in a good little spot right now, but there's still work to be done to just get to that, over that hump.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So, all right, y'all, that's been Ja'Kai Moore. Ja'Kai, you, and obviously it's a Garnet Trust interview, man. The fans out there who are supporting Garnet Trust, then that allows Garnet Trust to support athletes like Ja'Kai, athletes like his teammates. You want to give a little quick shout out to the fans out there that have just supported the Gamecocks throughout your time in South Carolina, man?
Shout out to the Gamecock fans, man. I appreciate y'all through the ups and downs, man. Like, y'all hold it down, and, like, y'all are true Gamecock fans, man. I love y'all, man. Been a fan here for, 5 years, man, and I appreciate y'all through everything.
All right, here's Ja'Kai Moore. Ja'Kai, it's been great, man. It's been great to catch up with you, man. Glad to see you are doing well. We're going to be watching. We'll be pulling for you this year. Hopefully we can do this again. And, again, I appreciate the time, man.
All right, anytime, Wes, man. Good talking to you, man.
Sure. He's Ja'Kai Moore. Y'all check him out on the field. Y'all check out GarnetTrust.com as well. And we'll be right back, continuing with Tyler Head and myself, the Garnet Trust Hour.
Well, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here on The Game. Appreciate Ja'Kai Moore taking a little bit of his time to talk to us and give us insight into his life and what's going on with the Gamecock football program, as we are now under 90 days away until kickoff. Season will be here before you know it, and Ja'Kai Moore certainly going to be a very big part of what this team does offensively. Is, you know, if you're projecting right now, probably going to hold down one of those guard spots when the season starts.
Yeah, man, we'll see what happens. I think Beamer was very specific about, hey, this is a guy who could play pretty much anywhere for us. And I think it's very valuable to have a guy who can essentially play if needed and has at left tackle, left guard, or right tackle. And if you go to Ja'Kai's bio, I mean, literally it's like, hey, he's played 5 games here, 6 games there. He's played all of them. You know, I think it's still difficult to predict how this thing's going to play out in terms of who's starting and who's starting where. You know, we had Torricelli Simpkins in here the other week. You know, Beamer has been very high on him and singled him out. So, you know, you bring back Troy Ball. Kamar Bell comes in as a transfer guy. Can Marquis Anderson get fully healthy? You know, if all those guys are pushing for playing time at guard, then, you know, I think Ja'Kai likes playing tackle. I think he also is comfortable playing tackle. But then you have Tree fighting it out there. You have Josiah fighting it out. Ja'Kai is in the mix at left tackle as well. It feels like Kingston Henry at right tackle has kind of just quietly locked down a spot over there. So, you know, I'll be curious to see when it all plays out, when it all kind of shuffles, the dominoes hit, exactly where Ja'Kai ends up. But when you start talking about that top 8, which is something more and more coaches talk about, and, you know, it's almost like an NFL way of thinking about things, in that, especially in the NFL, you only have so many roster spots. So it's like, all right, here are the 5, right? Here are the 5 starters. But then who are your next 3? And so it's not really like a 1-for-1, like you have 5, then you have 5 more. It's, all right, if one guy goes down, who is next? And you adjust, you rotate from there. So I think Ja'Kai, versatility and experience, he's definitely in that top 8.
No, without a doubt. And we saw him have to get shuffled around a little bit on the line a season ago. Unfortunately, he was one of the guys that did end up dealing with an injury, like it felt like everybody on the offensive line did a season ago. So, again, we're hoping everybody stays healthy. And as we sit right now, again, still some 90 days away from the season starting. So time through the summer and as well as fall camp to really solidify who that starting 5 is going to be. And while we assume Moore's going to be that, you know, maybe where exactly he's going to slide in isn't 100% at this point in time. Would you say that Rashawn Lee at center is probably the closest thing to a guarantee we have on the front 5 right now?
Sure feels that way. I would say Rashawn Lee starting somewhere. It seems like they want him at center. Again, with him, you got some versatility. He stepped in and played great at right tackle. So is that something? You know, V. Lee's played guard in his career as well. So I think, assuming health, and I'm trying to get V. Lee for our next Garnet Trust interview. So stay tuned on that. Not locked in yet. I'm trying to set it up to where we could have him for Thursday. And, you know, these are 2 guys that are veterans. Beamer praised them both for being bigger leaders this year and kind of taking on that leadership role, because you got a unique blend of, okay, guys that have stayed a long time. Ja'Kai talked about why he didn't hit the transfer portal when so many other guys in today's college football do. But then you have guys that have come in from the transfer portal yourself. You know, if you're South Carolina, then you have the young guys that are really pushing for playing time. So I think it's good when you have a couple of veterans that are taking ownership of this group, and think it's important to stay for the month of May and kind of get in that extra work. So, but yeah, I think right now, if everybody's healthy, and you just said who's the biggest lock to start, probably Rashawn Lee, and I think it's probably at center. Past that, I really don't know. I mean, Kingston Henry honestly may be next, but I don't know. I don't know what order you would put guys in and most likely to be locked in to start. I think I would lock Ja'Kai into that top 8, but I don't even know if I would lock him into the top 5.
Yeah, for sure. And the Henry thing's interesting because, of course, he was the starting right tackle going into the season last year against North Carolina. Didn't last but a few snaps in that game and was able to get his spot back when the season went along and he finally got healthy again, only get hurt one more time. So he kind of gets lost in the shuffle of all this, but they obviously see a lot in him and believe in his ability and potential if he's already, earned that job theoretically a year ago and in position to earn it once again. But again, knock on wood, assuming everybody stays healthy, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think you do have a lot more competition at those spots than maybe you did last year. Obviously, health played a big part in all that, but even before you started having the injuries pile up, or I would say even before you had the in-season injuries pile up, obviously the loss of Jalen Nichols last spring proved to be very costly for South Carolina. And you could kind of see it coming. And, I remember kind of trying to assess where things are on the offensive line and really take a deep dive, looking at a potential depth chart in the summer and being like, wait a second, like this could be an issue. And I think at least this year, you don't quite know what it's going to look like yet, but I think you actually maybe have competition for more of the right reasons. Sometimes you have competition because just nobody is stepping up. I think you do have better options. Now, the next step is, can you take that and sort of have them gel together into that complete unit that you want? And I think that was a big part of last year, too, the combination of the fact that people weren't stepping up and just kind of taking control of the left tackle and right tackle spots, plus then the injuries. You just didn't have that cohesiveness that you need in a front five. So you're always going to have some level of shuffling, but the more you can put guys in one spot, the more you can put them beside the same guy, the more that cohesiveness will kind of build and they can gel together. So I think that's a huge key. If you're talking about storylines through the summer into preseason ball, can you let these guys kind of stick to one spot and then gel together from there?
Absolutely, and we'll see how that plays out over the summer and the fall and see who that starting 5 is when the Old Dominion game rolls around, again, in just under 90 days. Of course, we're going to jump headfirst into the Kingston conversation once again at the start of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Gamecock Larry, though, has been holding on the phone. Didn't get a chance to get to him at the last hour.
Gamecock Larry.
To hear his thoughts. Gamecock Larry, I'm sure you are very fired up and have some opinions on what's gone down in the past 24 hours. What's on your mind this morning?
Good morning.
How we doing?
Morning.
I'm doing okay. You got me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Tyler's talking about Kingston and what he's done. But when they hired Kingston, Monty Lee was his best leader. They fired Chad Holbrook. And Kingston took Chad Holbrook's recruits and players to the Super Regional. They got completely away from Richardson, June Range, Tanner, Gamecock baseball, and they brought Kingston in. And Kingston took Holbrook slaves to the Super Regionals, but he didn't do anything after that. He got completely away from the Gamecock style of baseball. I think if Holbrook would have stayed on, we'd have been in Super Regionals, and we would have been in Omaha because we were playing Tanner baseball. He got completely away from it. I think if they can get a high top coach, to maybe pay him $1.5 million, $1.8 million, they could get one. But if they can't, go ahead. Hire Monty Lee. Get Landon Powell as a hitting coach, a batting coach, or whatever you call it. You can get probably maybe me call that one of them lower echelon managers. They hire them
Skylar Meade?
back
Is that
the tennis style of baseball.
talking about
And
Skylar Meade from Troy?
Right, we would be on. We would get back to the Tanner Richardson style and the Lane style of baseball, and we would go to the College World Series within 1 to 2 years. Get back to the old time baseball, not this analytical stuff that this guy brought in. He ruined our program. Let's get back to the old style baseball, old style Carolina Gamecock baseball, and we will be on top. And yes, we still an elite program because we're in the SEC. But that's only the reason why. But we don't play. We haven't played in 6 years. We haven't played Gamecock, Tanner, Richardson baseball. That's all I got to say. Love all y'all. Go Gamecocks.
Appreciate it as always, Gamecock Larry. Knew he'd have some strong opinions on that. See, when he said Meade, I thought he said me. And I was like, are we hiring Gamecock Larry as an assistant too? Because that'd be, I mean, you want to talk about a superpower team. He took all the candidates and just said, well, let's have them all on the staff.
Yeah, and that's been honestly, that's been a discussion piece I've seen out there. You know, could you get some of the band back together? Would Landon Powell come as a hitting coach? I'm sure right now Landon Powell wants the head job, but
probably
could you get him in as a hitting coach? Maybe. I think the Monty Lee thought is one that would be met with, I think people around the state that are kind of like what I would call baseball heads, like state, high school coaches, stuff like that, guys that have been around these programs for a long time, would maybe love to see Monty Lee get a shot. I think your random Gamecock fan A maybe is saying, I need fresh blood. I want to see something new. I want to see a fresh approach to this job. Let's just start over. And, from what I hear, South Carolina is going to take a kind of big national approach to this thing. Like they're going to talk to a lot of coaches. I think they want to go out and get a big name potentially. I think Monty Lee, though, could he win with the right staff? Absolutely, he could. But I think you've got to exhaust your other options and have those other conversations first.
It's definitely a lot to unpack from this. And again, we were reacting to the breaking news right at 24 hours ago when it had happened on yesterday's show. But we've kind of had a day to think about this, a lot of angles to kind of examine. And now we have a list of candidates to look into as well. So we'll really dive into this at first coming up in the next hour and really kind of start off with the Monty Lee thing because it's an interesting point to bring up. And there is a lot of support from recruits, guys within the team, guys within the organization that would want to see it stay a little bit status quo with a guy like Monty Lee. But we'll dive into all that coming up in the next hour, the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, as well as get into something we didn't have time for yesterday, and that was the big recruiting and official visit weekend that Wes and Chris were in the thick of this past weekend. That's all coming up next. 11 o'clock hour, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
All right, coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover, brought to you as always by Firehouse Subs. It is almost lunchtime. Go ahead, get the app fired up, get your web browser fired up. Head on over to firehousesubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app. I know all of you, though, you already have the Firehouse Subs app, and you've been accumulating points every single time you order the Rapid Rescue to Go, which is, of course, by far the easiest, most efficient way to avoid the wait and order online. By now, you probably have enough points that you can get free food. So why not get your free food from our friends at Firehouse Subs? Want to try something new? Try the new barbecue Cuban. It is Southern roots with a Cuban twist. But whatever you're feeling, whatever your favorites, there is a Firehouse Sub for you. and it's almost lunchtime, so hit them up. Again, firehousesubs.com, Firehouse Subs app. Want to try something else new? Try my favorite, brisket, add bacon, right now at Firehouse Subs.
$11 o'clock. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell along with you on this Tuesday as we are now over 24 hours removed from Coach Kingston being relieved of his head coaching duties here at South Carolina. Now the question on everyone's mind is who ends up filling that spot for the time going forward. Now, in the interim, it is, of course, Monty Lee, who is the assistant coach and recruiting coordinator for South Carolina baseball. A lot of smoke to him maybe going to the Citadel, but a lot of people also pushing for him to get this job as well. And it's an interesting dynamic when you talk about Monty Lee and the prospect of him potentially becoming South Carolina's coach. And, you know, there's a good story on Gamecock Central about all the recruits, guys that are committed to this program, you know, pushing for Monty Lee to be that guy. And of course, he has a great relationship with him, being a part of that recruiting process. PJ from Orlando, who may not end up playing at South Carolina because he's going to end up drafted so high, one of the ones that is voicing his support, as well as several others too. But when it comes to where South Carolina is as a program, Monty Lee was brought in a year ago to help out the offense, which he's done a tremendous job of. But he's still a part of the Kingston era. Part of me feels like you kind of need to just clean house and start over, and doing it and bringing Monty Lee on as the permanent head coach, I don't quite think accomplishes that.
Yeah, and I think, for one, we got to see how this thing plays out. And so I think if you're looking at it from a South Carolina perspective, and you can throw all the coaches into a list, into a pot, and you can just say, well, this is the one I want first, this is the one I want second, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're in a situation where you're trying to go hire the best fit, you don't know yet who's going to say yes. You don't know yet what they're going to be asking financially.
Sure.
You don't know what they're going to be asking in terms of, NIL promises, in terms of like resources, what they're going to be asking in terms, you have a good facility in Founders. It's still relatively new, but it could need maybe a freshening up, frankly. Mm-hmm. So, I think all your options are not in a vacuum, right? So, to me, I don't completely throw away the idea of going out and getting or keeping Monty Lee in the right circumstance. I think it could work. Now, does that mean that's my first move, that's my first call? I would say no to that. I think you got to see what you're working with out there with some of these sitting head coaches. I think you got to interview, some assistants that are the top names out there, and see what you think after talking to them, and sort of what their approaches would be to sitting in the head seat. And, ultimately, I know fans are going to want a sitting head coach.
Sure.
I think getting a sitting head coach gives you a little bit more data on what to expect from them.
Sure.
But I also don't think that necessarily means that you're hiring a better coach. Like the whole point is to go try to find the best coach you can get. So yes, it is difficult. It's a little bit of a crapshoot to try and predict which of the hot, up and coming assistant names are the ones that are going to show they're not ready, and which are the ones that are going to prove that, this is the next big head coach in baseball.
And look, hiring coaches is not a perfect science. You can hire somebody that has won 10 World Series and he comes to South Carolina, doesn't work out for whatever reason. You can hire somebody that's been an assistant his entire career, never head coach before, and he ends up taking them to great heights. You just truly never know. Now, I will say, if you look at somebody's track record and they have made trips to Omaha, they have won College World Series, the likelihood of them coming here and being successful probably going to be higher than hiring that assistant or somebody from a Group of 5 program that has not achieve those same heights necessarily. So again, it's an imperfect science, but you do have to look at these guys' track records and what they've done in the past to give you an indication of potentially what they're capable of. And that brings me back to the Monty Lee, question of this. And yes, he did take College of Charleston to 1 Super, and that helped him get the Clemson job. But in his time at Clemson, yes, he got them to regionals, but he didn't get them past that. And again, Clemson's a good program that has resources in the whole 9 yards where you should be able to go there and be successful. And again, regional, that's good. A lot of programs, that is great in their eyes. But for programs like South Carolina and Clemson, that was not enough. He obviously did not end up hanging at Clemson. That's why he's here at South Carolina as an assistant. I just don't know if his track record up to this point is exactly what you're looking for in your next head coach.
If you get 3 no's from those head coaches, though,
then he probably jumps to the top of your list or close to it.
So if Monty Lee is your, and I hesitate to say it like this, but if Monty Lee is kind of your, it won't get past him option, you're in pretty good shape. Honestly, you can afford to go swinging for now. Now, time is of the essence as well.
It is.
You've got to, more than ever, you have pressures on you to go make not just a great hire, but to make it. And it's never going to be fast enough for fans, honestly.
Sure.
But you got to move pretty quick. Now, luckily, your head coaches out there that you're going to talk to, most of them, their seasons are over,
including one that ended yesterday as well.
Yes.
And that is important because you do want to make a hire quickly because, of course, the portal's open. You want to hang on to talent and so obviously start trying to bring in new guys that know who they're going to be playing for. But at the same time, you don't want to rush and just say, okay, we'll take this guy and let's go from here. So it's a delicate process. It's kind of like that fine line you're walking of being quick but not too quick and taking a while but not taking too long at the same time.
Well, and it's a case where obviously you got to make the right hire, but you could severely hamper their early momentum
Sure.
if you don't make the hire in an efficient manner. And, the portal is already open.
Yes.
And so, as we've seen a lot of times, and I do think the baseball portal, it seems to be a little bit more, like there's a lot of guys already in there, don't get me wrong, but maybe in football, a lot of times it's literally, all right, who gets on these guys first?
Yeah.
And obviously, a lot of times guys already know who is interested in them before they even go in. And you I'm sure, have that to an extent in baseball. But I think you do want to – you don't want the portal – like you don't want guys to be out there choosing schools that would be interested in you if you already had a coach and you miss on those opportunities.
And that is – an interesting angle from the Lee perspective. And as I mentioned, a lot of recruits, a lot of commits that are voicing their support of Lee being the head coach. Same thing with guys that are already on the roster. If you still have that same, assistant coach now being promoted to head coach, there may be opportunity for a lot of those guys to stick around. And the biggest one being Ethan Petrie. And, Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball didn't name him specifically, but he did mention yesterday there's a pretty big name on Carolina's roster that they might have a tough time holding on to that we're assuming could be Ethan Petrie. And again, if you keep Monty Lee around, who was again a big part of him coming along as an offensive player that we've seen in his first 2 years here, you might have a good shot at keeping him. Now, is he the reason why your team's going to be successful? No, but he's a big part of it. And if you want to keep Ethan Petrie, Monty Lee might be a big reason why he sticks around if he does.
Yeah, and I think when you start getting to that point, I think if you think Monty Lee and the staff he could put together, among your options that are actually hireable, if you think that is your best choice, if you're Ray Tanner, if you're Chance Miller, you make the choice. Like, you deal with the fact that some fans are going to be against it. Sure. And you just, if you think it's the best move, you make the move. But I don't think you make that move because current players think that's the move you should make.
Right.
I don't think you make that move because high school kids, I mean, come on. Like, if we're making decisions because of high school kids, well, that's probably a problem.
And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of keeping your class intact more than anything else. Not necessarily that, the 17-year-old knows what is the best for the program, but making sure that you have this talent that you've already accrued up to this point staying committed to South Carolina, which, again, isn't the end-all, be-all, but it's an angle to the Lee thing that is worth talking about. But I agree with you, and this is what we talked about yesterday. You got to swing for the fences. You got to go out there and shoot for some high-level coaches, established guys at major programs that have been to Omaha and all that kind of stuff. And if none of those end up working out, and I don't want to say settle for Lee, but if it ends up being Monty Lee, then, that's what you end up rolling with. But you got to swing for some of these other guys.
The other side of it to me is, frankly, and I hear people talk about, and I've heard lots of chatter, internally, like, that the players have let it be known. Some of the older players have let it be known that's what they want. And anytime you have a coaching change, regardless of sport, you have an internal favorite that most of the time you do, that it's like an assistant coach who is a player's coach, and all the guys kind of rally around. Like, this is common. They rally around that guy. And, I think the unfortunate thing for South Carolina, if you are making a hire to, like, keep the core together, the recruiting class is one thing.
Sure.
Could you get PJ Morlando to school? Like that's I mean, I don't think he's coming to school regardless, but that would be part of the conversation. But who of this core, and I'm not talking about the pitchers, really, honestly. There's some good young pitchers on this staff. But even looking at the pitchers, but I'm talking more position players, your lineup, who is even coming back anyway? Like, yeah, you have Petrie, but there's not really most of your guys who played this year either, frankly, are guys that maybe get recruited over or are out of eligibility or are already 3-year guys. And in baseball, if you're a draft pick, you don't stay for a 4th year. You just don't, because it destroys your leverage and your first contract. So who's come? You're not hiring a coach for one player. Who else would even come back?
Nobody significant enough. I'll say that much outside of Petrie, because you're losing Messina, losing Cassis. I'm blanking. There's probably a couple other guys off the top of the list that I'm not thinking of right now. But you are losing most of your
Kennedy Jones, Brenling, Dylan Brewer.
Most of your
Parker Nolan.
So the team's going to look different next year.
You need to upgrade the left side of your infield anyway, whether that's guys improving or getting replaced. I mean, who else in the lineup are you even considering? I think as far as what your approach is moving forward. Like I think, as far as current roster, that's not, and if you feel really good about the pitching staff, the next guy could always keep Matt Williams.
I don't know if you feel all that great about the pitching staff in general. It had its moments this year, but certainly something that
I'm just talking in terms of keeping your young talent, a Jake McCoy, Tyler Pitzer. I think those guys are future starters on this team.
Yeah, no, definitely so. And again, there's a lot of angles to look at that but you wanted to dive into something specifically with this. What does it take to succeed at South Carolina? What do you need as a head coach to be successful? What do you also need to bring to the table as a head coach to be successful too? We'll examine that angle coming up next. There's a lot of you waiting in the Firehouse Subs text line too. We'll get to some of those thoughts, as well as it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game. Probably turn my microphone on. That would help. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell along with you on this Tuesday. Quick reminder, Craft Beer Card is back. Go online to 1075game.com. Click on the Sweet Deals tab. Purchase a Craft Beer Card, $360 value, all yours for just $79. You can use it up to 12 different craft beer locations around the Columbia area. Continuing our conversation about what Carolina is going to do with its now vacant head coaching job. And you presented a question yesterday when we were talking about this of what does it take to be successful here at South Carolina? What does whoever they end up hiring as the head coach, whether it be Monty Lee or somebody on the outside right now, what does that coach need to come here and be successful?
Yeah, and I'd like for everybody to weigh in. Firehouse Subs text line, 404-6100, 803 area code, of course. You know, I think, as with anything, and it got me thinking about this because remember we were talking to Matt Brown on the EA Sports video game.
Yep.
He's like, you can sort of take your coach and you can say, hey, well, this guy's going to be a mastermind, or this guy's going to be a great recruiter, or this guy's going to be great with X's and O's. And, you know, I think in real life, in reality, every coach sort of has a little matrix there of things that they're best at and things that maybe they have to supplement with their assistants. So I think when you talk about fit at a place, then a lot of times you're kind of trying to figure out, all right, where are the built-in advantages of that university? And then what skill set, what personality traits, what various things about a particular coach could make them more successful at that place. And so to me, you really are, you're kind of trying to thread a needle if you're South Carolina, in my opinion. You're trying to walk the line between, frankly, this at its core is a tradition-rich program, but it's a blue-collar mindseted program. And, you know, in baseball, the best sort of compliment you can give a guy, I feel like, is you call him like a dirt bag. Like that means like you're an old school, you're not scared to get dirty, you're playing for the love of the game. However, this is modern college athletics, modern baseball. You have to be willing, able, and have an understanding of how to navigate NIL and how to navigate the transfer portal. So is there a guy out there who is old school enough that he fits your program, but new school enough that can navigate those things? Additionally, Tyler, I think whenever there's a change and it didn't work out before, you see this in politics, you see it in coaching searches, you see it in academia. Lots of times, if it didn't work out before, you go to the opposite approach of what that most recent guy was all about. So if you hire a defensive coach in football, it doesn't work out, everybody's saying, hey, go offense, go offense. And then when they give up 3rd and 25 in the fourth quarter, they're saying, well, what happened to the defense? And so I still think you have to be willing to lean on some analytics, lean on some technology, lean on some things like that. But a lot of people, after seeing that be a huge part of Kingston's approach, may be a little sour on that. So I think you really are trying to thread a needle for an old school-minded coach, but that also understands and is smart enough to tackle the modern aspects of the game and the college sport.
And it is a balance. And, you know, again, Kingston, very analytical. He's brought up those numbers at the end of the year with the .979 fielding percentage. And when he, you know, subbed in Causey to pinch hit for Lee Croy the other weekend, you know, cited that that pitcher was, I think, had a 111 batting average against righties or something like that. So he has numbers to back up why he makes his moves. But there are other times where, you know, not playing small ball and saying, hey, just old school baseball here. You got to try and bunt, move some runners over that Kingston wasn't as willing to do. That, you know, whoever you end up bringing in maybe is a little more lenient to those kind of things. Where they balance both things a little bit without leaning too heavily one side or the other. And again, that's an imperfect science because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But definitely, you know, you're kind of be potentially going to be going from a guy that was heavy into the analytics to maybe somebody that tries to find that balance somewhere in the middle.
Well, I think you've got to find somebody that is willing to find the balance that isn't just like analytics are trash. You know, I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can win in today's game without at least being open to what the analytics are. Now, the analytics also, I would like to think that college baseball now has their own analytics, but for the longest time, you know, it felt like college baseball was going to like a never bunt scenario. Like the analytics almost rarely, like pretty much never tell you to bunt.
Sure.
Now, part of that is because in Major League Baseball, that's a guaranteed out. Like I don't know what the number is, but it is near a guaranteed out.
Right.
In college baseball, these aren't quite the level, obviously, of players and athletes. So how many times in a pressure-packed situation, especially you start getting later in a game, start getting later in a season when everything matters, how many times do we see a college baseball team bunt and it gets botched because of the pressure?
How many times do we see it this past weekend at the regional and at Hoover the week before? Like, again, you're not talking about the most elite defenders, and we've seen it on our own side here at South Carolina as well, where those kind of things go wrong. So, yeah, you have a higher chance of success and just getting that guy on base in general when you do that.
Yeah, so that's why, like you said, you do need some balance to that and some willingness, I think, to consider all sides. My biggest issue maybe throughout the Kingston era, in my opinion, looking back at the big picture, was that when he first arrived, all we heard about was launch angle and exit velocity. And it was, you know, this is the big thing right now, launch angle, exit velo. And South Carolina did go to a super regional that first year, but they had to completely change some of their hitting approach as the year progressed because they were striking out so much.
Sure.
And so, you know, then at the time it was shift. We're going to shift like on every batter based on what this chart says. And at some point, and I don't remember which seasons were which, at some point they went away from shifting. And then they went back to shifting. And, you know, I appreciate adjusting, but do you not at some point have to have a philosophy? Do you not at some point have to have, like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is our vision for this program? So I think you want somebody who has a clear vision for this is how we're going to play, and then we are going to recruit to the way we're going to play as well. If we're going to be a team that tries to just hit the ball out of the park every single time, we're going to recruit to that. If we're going to be a team that is going to run and play small ball and try to put pressure on you that way, recruit to that as well.
Right. Well, and, you know, I don't know where you'd rank South Carolina in terms of attractiveness of jobs, but one thing you can say definitively that whoever ends up coming in as the head coach, they're going to have support. This is a community and a fan base that loves its baseball program and is willing to buy in and invest into it, and they had done that in the Kingston era, but you and I talked about this yesterday. There just kind of seemed to be that apathy towards the end of it. We saw sometimes this year, even go back to last year, some people just felt like Kingston was not getting the job done, ready to move on to something else. So whoever ends up coming in, there's going to be that new level of excitement. Hey, this new coach brings this to the table, that to the table. So you're going to have that support from day one, and that leads to NIL and all those other things that you're going to need to be successful at the end of the day. It's keeping that support and sustaining it that is the tricky part at a program like South Carolina.
Yeah, and we obviously know NIL is a part of it now. And I think if you're South Carolina, if you're administration, if you're Garnet Trust, it's hard to go out and say, hey, we got to hit the portal again. We need more NIL resources. And then you have that apathy set in. Do you get a boost from bringing in a new coach and bringing that excitement in terms of dollars that are committed to NIL? I think you do. Now, who you can go hire, you know, I don't even know necessarily if this guy has to be a big, quote-unquote, like NIL guy as a coach. I think they just have to be willing to acknowledge the importance of it, have the right people in place to help manage it, and come in firing and say, look, guys, if we're going to do this, I need – you have to be able to, at some level, be a fundraiser and make phone calls and be like, hey, I'm going to need your support.
Right.
You have to be willing to do events. You have to be willing to do group setting things that maybe you can tie into being your best NIL donors get this time with the head coach. You have to be willing to do all those things, I think. So to me, that would be one of the things maybe not at the top of my list, but one of the things on the list has got to be, can you rally the NIL support for this program from the moment you get in, because you're going to have to go hit that transfer portal from the moment you get in as well.
Again, the question is, what does a coach need to be successful here at South Carolina? Let us know your thoughts. Firehouse Subs text line 834-46100. We'll get back to some of those at the end of the show. But coming up next, we do need to jump in to the very busy weekend that was camp and official visit weekend this past weekend here in Columbia. Dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here on The Game. Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, Towerhead, West Mitchell, along with you on this Tuesday. And, of course, the Kingston news been the dominant headline for the past 2 days here on the game. But it was a very busy weekend from a football standpoint when it came to camp and recruiting. You and Chris were out there at camp on Friday. We got Chris's early morning report. Things hadn't really started rolling too much as of yet at that point in time. What played out as the day went along out there at camp?
Yeah, I think you look at these camps, and a lot of it is sort of, honestly, kind of you're laying the foundation, you're laying the groundwork for some of your future recruiting. A lot of times it used to be, before the recruiting calendar just got completely sped up, it used to be that you would maybe have a 4-star or 5-star guy out there from the current class, from like the class being recruited, rising seniors, that would go compete, and they'd sometimes be competing for offers. For the most part, I mean, like we're going to get to, this weekend was spent tracking what was going on with official visitors. And, that's been new in the last few, 4 or 5 years, where you could take these June officials, and guys just have been taking advantage of that. But, there are still, for the most part, again, you're kind of looking at 2026s. South Carolina had a couple of 2027 quarterbacks in, one that already had a South Carolina offer, another that went home with a South Carolina offer. So you're kind of gathering that data. They do NFL Combine-style testing. That's where you take all that testing, throw it into, a built-in spreadsheet and kind of gather what names you need to be keeping an eye on moving forward. But for this current class, 2025 rising seniors, there was a guy we were most interested in sort of seeing and hearing about, and that was Jaquel Holman from right here in South Carolina, a guy who is on the board, sort of coming in as an athlete. South Carolina put him through the paces, worked him out at linebacker, got a lot of one-on-one time with Clayton White and, the staff as a whole, and then did ultimately offer him a scholarship. Not obviously at this point an auto-commit situation, but at the same time, he has said in multiple interviews South Carolina's his dream school. That was the offer he wanted, and I expect that South Carolina will ultimately land him, and he's one of these sort of under the radar, a little bit, I don't want to say late bloomer physically. I mean more so just late bloomer in terms of how he's sort of popped up on the recruiting radar. And, we see that in the state of South Carolina all the time, especially some of these smaller schools, smaller towns, stuff like that. And so Jaquel Holman, sort of the next in your long line of smaller town elite athletes in the state of South Carolina.
Well, and that's what's good about these camps, and we talked about it, quite a bit last year. We had a guy in, J.R. Johnson that maybe was flying under the radar a little bit, came into camp, really popped, turned a lot of heads, and of course now he's at South Carolina getting set for his first season here. So that's another guy that, again, like you said, it's kind of a late bloomer, but kind of comes along in the process and, really turns heads when he gets into one of those camp settings.
Yeah, and I think you look at Nick E., another guy that was a camp offer, and just you're really looking at these measurables, honestly. And I know ultimately you got to be a good football player, but the measurables do tell a story. So that's the first part of it, is a lot of times most of these guys are going to run, they're going to do the vertical, they're going to do the shuttle, they're going to do all these things in the morning, and then they're actually going to work out one-on-one. The value of this over, let's say, going to a game, if you're a staff member or watching on film, is that, for one, you are able to kind of, in real time, coach them up and see how they respond to it. Does this guy respond well to not criticism, but being told, hey, let's do this differently? Does this guy in real time adjust and be coachable and do what I'm asking them to do? And then the other part of it is you're getting to see them a lot of times against guys who are maybe similar athletically. Most of the time, if you think about it, let's say you got a 4-star cornerback. How often in high school football is he matching up in a game setting with a 4-star wide receiver? You just don't see it. So obviously this is not quote-unquote real football. Like, they're not out there in helmets with pads and stuff like that, but you do get to see them athletically compete against guys who are similar athletes. So there's a lot of value in camp performance, camp evaluations. And, I think with Jaquel, it felt like almost a formality. Like, as long as everything checked out, he was going to probably get that offer. But South Carolina wanted to check all the boxes, see it for themselves, make sure everything checked out as you would expect it to, and obviously it did.
Another name we were keeping an eye on for the official visit over the weekend was Jaden Breaker, the linebacker out of Gwinnett or South Gwinnett in Georgia. Good guy with good size, and kind of reading the takeaways that you guys had from Gamecock Central. Really liked his conversations with Clayton White and kind of where they saw him as a potential Sam in that linebacker, potentially maybe even in that 3-3-5 if he were to come to South Carolina.
Yeah, I think this is actually, reading the tea leaves here, some things I've heard, this is going to end up being a pretty big linebacker class, I think, just from a, obviously you're looking for quality, but from a quantity standpoint as well. And so I think you look at what they're losing from this year's team. You look at the fact that you did bring in a couple of guys in the portal this last class, but they're both senior guys. So you've got to really plan for that. And you have a couple of guys, Wendell Gregory, J.R. Johnson, are already on campus, but you really are going to have to supplement and re-add to that depth, I think. So Breaker's a guy they had in sort of on an unofficial visit. I guess that was maybe a month or two ago, probably going on about 2 months now. Got the offer then, loved it. A lot of these guys want to take their visits, right? Like they're gonna kind of complete the process. He's in that same category, but really, I think South Carolina's in great shape there. The schools that they're going up against are a little bit more manageable than maybe some of these other guys. They're still going for your home runs, your grand slams, like a Zayden Walker, who's going to be in June 21st weekend, I guess that would be. But if you're going to fill out a depth chart, if you're going to fill out a class, you also have to go after guys that it's a little bit more manageable in the recruiting process as well.
Well, speaking of depth, and I thought this was an interesting nugget in the recruiting weekend, but you have a guy in Isaac Souls Jr., I believe Spike is his nickname, coming in out of Louisville, 6'1",
awesome kid,
290 center, and center's not a position they really addressed in these past couple cycles. You talked about Rashawn Lee, coming to his end of his career here at South Carolina very soon. That is certainly an area you want to build a little bit more depth in, and Souls seems like the kind of guy that they would want to kind of fill that gap.
Yeah, that was part of the recruiting process. Hey, we haven't taken a true center in 2 years, and that's not a spot you always take a guy. Like there's not even a center designation on 3. It's interior offensive lineman, and some schools a lot of times will just recruit interior guys. One of them ultimately, hey man, you're a center, and so I think there's several guys on the roster who could be centers in the future, but when it comes to a recruiting pitch, when it comes to like, hey, man, you're a true center, you could come in and compete for that spot, it does carry some weight. And he's a kid, you look at him physically, I mean, if he was taller, like he is a center, probably in theory, a center only. Mm-hmm. I think if he was taller, maybe as a borderline high 4-star guy, because he is constantly gone in these camp settings and took home offensive line MVP. And so this is a great football player. South Carolina's been on him for a while. Great kid, has leadership qualities. NC State, I've heard, feels really good as well coming into this weekend. But then I was also told, hey, South Carolina feels really good here as well. So little interesting battle of the Carolinas bubbling up for a guy who's not even from the Carolinas, but one to definitely keep an eye on as far as guys who could be in the class for South Carolina. And his nickname Spike. Like how, I mean, it's perfect.
Last one here real quick as we wrap up this segment. An in-state guy from Rock Hill and Malik Clark, 4-star wide receiver, good size, definitely kind of a guy that can fill that X spot. I thought it was interesting, his comments coming away from the weekend. He just wants to be wanted, which a guy with that size at a 4-star spot, I imagine he's wanted by a lot of people, including South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a priority guy. Football City, USA, position of need. Like you said, he's got size. He can run. He can make plays. I think he's a very important recruit for South Carolina. You're fighting a little bit of an uphill battle coming in. UNC, was the leader. That's who's kind of set the bar. And Malik actually, while we were on air, put out his official top 5. No real surprise. South Carolina, UNC, NC State are all in it. Florida State, they've been pushing for an official. Looks like they may get one. Auburn, that kind of came out of nowhere. They're in the top 5 as well. There's some talk. He may be taking an official to Notre Dame as well. So this one is far from over. The feedback I got from Malik was that, he liked everything about it. The feedback that I got from talking to people in Rock Hill, who are familiar with his recruitment are that South Carolina made a move. The thing we don't know yet, did they make a big enough move to where they have surpassed North Carolina in this battle?
We'll certainly see. And again, it's just the start of a very busy month when it comes to official visits as well as camps through the month of June. We'll come back. We'll jump back into the baseball conversation. We asked the question a little bit earlier. What do you think it takes for a coach to win here at South Carolina? What do they need to be successful? We'll hit that coming up next to wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, along with you for a couple more minutes here, revisiting a question we asked a little bit earlier. What does it take to be successful for a baseball coach here at South Carolina. A couple of you weighing in here. Nameless Texter says, this is what the baseball coach needs to be successful here. Bottom line, the Jim and Joes, the elite talent, are getting harder to land. Coaches now must be able to develop and then keep them all with the NIL landscape of today. And then another texter weighs in, or excuse me, Jay weighs in and says, all about culture, hard to define and pinpoint, but what you have to be successful at South Carolina.
So recruit better guys,
recruit better, develop talent, and I guess overall just have a good culture about the program, which I feel like what this program is in general, you're already kind of halfway there, if that makes sense. You just need to implement your own kind of foundation within the coaching staff, the team itself, and then you should be good. And again, the support was here for Kingston as it was for Holbrook early on in his tenure as well. But when they see it's trending in the other direction or it's not getting better, that's when people start to turn away. But like you said a little bit earlier, you bring in a new fresh face that, can lay out this plan of what the success is going to look like here at South Carolina. That support's going to be there from day one.
It will be, and I think that has to sort of carry over to the NIL side, frankly. And so, Tyler, to directly respond to what the first guy said, do you have to have player development? Of course.
Yeah.
But I'll even go back to Ray Tanner was using the transfer portal before it was even cool, and it just at the time was not called the transfer portal. It was called filling your gaps with junior college players.
Yeah.
And so even Ray Tanner's best teams, you can look back at those runs. Here's what they would do. They would build a core with exactly what he's talking about. And a lot of times, not all the time, but there would be a heavy amount of in-state guys that were on those teams. And so that would be your core. You need to, as he said, keep them, develop them. Is there a little bit more of an appetite for players to stick around for 2 or 3 years in baseball at the SEC level than maybe there is in football or even basketball? It seems like there might be, especially if you're winning, especially if you're getting taken care of in NIL.
Sure.
But I do think you can't just build a program anymore on that alone. So I think you have to take a 3-tiered approach. The good thing about JUCO baseball is there's a lot more high-quality players there than there is maybe that you'll find in JUCO football, just because you actually have a lot of guys who will go the JUCO route just because they're trying to still develop physically, just because they don't want to get caught into being at one place for 3 years.
Right.
Because you can go to Major League Baseball, you can go in the draft after 1 year at JUCO. So I think you have to have high school guys that you develop. You have to have portal guys to fill the gaps. And you also still in college baseball can really mine the JUCO ranks for players as well. So I think to build a true roster, you're going to have to pull guys from all of those areas.
Well, I also think one thing you're also going to have on your side is time. And we've talked about this with, Ray Tanner as the AD. Most coaches that he's hired and the coaches that we've seen under his time as AD have gotten a fair amount of time to do whatever they're going to do. Now, does that become detrimental at a point and maybe hang on to guys too long? It does. But if you're coming in as a head coach, I think it's also important to know that you're not under somebody with a quick trigger necessarily that's going to say, all right, it's been 2 years. We're not in Omaha. What's going on? Like, you're going to have time to implement whatever you're trying to implement to hopefully be successful, as opposed to saying, all right, you better come in here and flip this thing on its head in year one.
Yeah, and I think, Tyler, to that point, Gamecock Larry, Lord love him earlier, and not picking on you, Gamecock Larry, I do love you, man, but I think he said Mark Kingston ruined the baseball program. I get it wasn't to the standard that we've seen, but
sure.
This is a program that went to a super regional last year and that made the tournament this year. Part of the reason Holbrook was let go was because they missed the tournament. I guess that would have been twice in the time he was there. And, so this is not a program that is like at the bottom of the SEC. This is not a program this year that finished below 500. So I think overall, so I think you want to bring in a fresh guy. It is a rebuild in a sense that every new coach is going to be a rebuild, but it's not a rebuild in the sense of that you just are like, man, there's no evidence whatsoever that this thing can be successful. Recruits have no reason to come here. Like, it can be done with the right guy.
The top of the top is here. You're somewhere about, I'd say, here in that middle ground, particularly in the SEC, to where it's not this insurmountable climb that's going to take forever to get back to the top. You just need the right coach and put the right pieces in place to make that happen. But no, this isn't like you're taking over Missouri and trying to build it up from a team that didn't even make the SEC tournament this year or something like that. Like, you don't have that far to go to get back to where this fan base thinks this program should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that alone gives you some excitement. It creates a little bit of expectation going into that first year as well for whoever the coach is.
Definitely so. So we'll continue to follow that and see what they ultimately decide to do for a head coach here at South Carolina. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Chubbs. Halftime show with Terry Ford up next here on the game.
All right, guys, once again, let me tell you about our friends over at Gold Line Framing. Obviously, for a lot of you right now, maybe someone in your life is graduating. It is graduation time. How about getting them a great, memorable gift of a custom frame for their diploma, whether that's a high school diploma, a University of South Carolina diploma, even maybe an Orange diploma as well. They can handle not just helping you pick out a great frame, but framing it up for you as well over at Gold Line Framing at 511 12th Street, West Columbia. In store, if you want some more gift ideas for that sports fan in your life, they've got an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and gift items. And whatever it is that you need framed up, they can frame it up for you. Like I said, it could be a diploma, but also an original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Maybe you have a signed print that you want to take to the next level. Call them right now. Call them today, 803-739-1337. Again, that's Gold Line Framing in West Columbia.